Hi guys and gals, and welcome to Magic. So in this session, I'm going to be showing you how I would implement the task management system specification from our previous video. As always, the first thing I do, I'd design my database using SQL Studio. I'd create a new database, call it tasks, and then I would add a new table to it, call it status. Remember our primary key trick here, where we wanted status names to be unique from the CRM system. Well, this is no different. So let's do the exact same thing here and use an varchar 100 as our name. And let's just add a description here as a data type text and allow for nullable there and click create. So we now have the status field. This is the status of a task, right? So now let's create the task table, tasks. This time we want to use an auto increment as the primary key. So just click create here after you have changed it to singular form on the primary key to task ID. Then we want to associate each task with a user. Remember our little username trick from previously where we got kind of like referential integrity from our CRM database into the Magic database? Well, we're going to do something similar here. Make sure you turn off nullable, choose data type text, give your field a name of username and click create. Now we want to have a foreign key from our tasks pointing into status. Is the name of our field, data type, text, points to table, status, points to field, name. We don't want to have nullable here because we want every single task to belong to one status. Click create. Now we want to have probably a description, or let's start with a title for a task. Texts, we don't want to have nullable on this because it's like too important, but the description, we can probably allow for nullable values. We still want to have it as text and create it. Now we can apply a little bit of a trick, which we haven't had a look at so far, which is that probably when we are creating tasks in the future, it might be important for us to see which date and time that particular task was created. So we want to create a field whose name is created, datetime with a type of timestamp, and we want to keep the default value, and then we want to remove the nullable here. What's happening now is that every single time we're inserting records into our tasks table, then basically the record gets an automatic field that's automatically created by the current UTC date and time. That's what current timestamp basically means. Now let me go over this and think a little bit and see if we are basically done. So we have each task should be associated to a user. Okay, we have a username here. Each task should have a status. Okay, it does. It's a foreign key pointing into the status table. Only admin and root accounts can create tasks. Okay, that's for later. Users can only change status of their own tasks, and that's for later. And we're now done, and we can go to the Crud generator and actually generate our Crud API. Now, the first table called status is pretty simple, right? We want basically guest accounts to be able to read status as fields, but we don't want them to be able to create, update, or delete status entities in our database. So that's a fairly simple one to generate a CRUD API for. However, this time we're also going to show you a little bit of a feature on the description field. Why? Because descriptions are typically multiple lines of text. Now, if we choose handling long text here for the description field, then it automatically transforms into a multi-line text area instead of a single line text input field in the front end. We can now CRUDify status only, and then we can go to the top and we can choose tasks. And this is where it becomes interesting. Why? Because the default handling of a task field is that users should only be allowed to update their own tasks, right? So at this point, we want to actually lock the username to the username. This applies basically row level security, ensuring that a non-root admin user can only see his or her own tasks. And we do not want to create a create endpoint. We do not want to create a delete endpoint. We only want users to be able to read their own tasks and update their own tasks. And as they are updating their own tasks, we only want them to be allowed to actually update the status. And by the way, status is also not long data because there's only like maximum 10 records here. So we want to turn off long data. Now let's go to title, turn off update. Now let's go to description, turn off update. Now let's ensure that created has update turned off. So now everything should only be read here except status. That's the only thing that should not be read here. Now when we are generating or crudifying the tasks table at the bottom of this page, we have created the my tasks component. Now we're going to crudify the same table again, but this time, actually, sorry, we need, I did a mistake. We need to apply guests as a role. Then we need to go at the top, make sure we overwrite and crudify tasks again. Sorry about that. Now we want to generate a Crud API once more for the same table, but this time we want to turn on all Crud verbs. And then we want to make sure that username is not locked to usernames, but rather handled as username lookup. And now we want to have all 4 Crud verbs for the username. We want to have all 4 Crud verbs for the status field. We want to have all 4 Crud verbs for the title. We want to have all 4 Crud verbs for the description. We still want to handle the description as a long text here. And we don't want to have the created field on create verbs or update verbs. But now comes the kicker, because now we're changing the secondary part of the URL to admin/tasks. Why? Because we are generating a Crud API once more, but this we're generating it only for root and admin accounts. So only root and admin accounts can read, can invoke create, read, update, or delete towards this web API. And this has consequences for how our front end ends up looking like. Let me now just sanity check that I've done everything correct. Title, turned off long data, status, not lock field, username handling, and there we are. We can now click Crudify tasks. If we now go to Hyper-ID and we look at the modules called tasks, and we see here, we only have tasks.count.get.hl, tasks.get.hl, and tasks.put.hl. These endpoints are all available for every user in our system, including guest users, which are the default user. However, the put thing here only takes the status field. While if we expand admin here and we check out put here, you can see this one allows us to update username, status, title, description, and everything. And here we have a full Crud API, while this one is arguably only partial, you might argue. Now, just to make sure we don't have any caching issues here, let's just remove the cache. Click F12, click Control R to refresh, and then let's go to Tools, Crud Generator, and let's create our front end. Call our app task, choose template Angular, find some nice color. Let's choose brown this time. Make sure we only crudify the tasks module and click Generate, and then click No. Go back to Hyper-ID, expand, etc. Front end, select source, download the folder, and then we are going to unzip the folder. Then we are going to open up Visual Studio Code. This is probably different for you yet again. However, I'm on a Mac, so therefore it looks like this, code / and I'm now opening up Visual Studio Code. I'm opening up a new terminal and I'm writing npm I. This takes some time, so I'm going to fast forward at this point in the video. When npm I is done, we can write ng serve to serve our thing, and yet again, this is going to take some time, so I'm going to fast forward. When ng serve is done, you can switch back to your browser, open up a new tab, open up localhost :4200, and here is our task management system. Let me log out and log in as my root account because I already have valid JWT token because I I had the token from the previous CRM video. Now you see we're left with a problem because here we have two tasks components. We have one called task/task. We have one called task/admin/tasks. We probably want to change the UI here, which you can do in Visual Studio Code by expanding source, app, then finding our shell folder, opening up shell.component.html, search for tasks, and then the first one, as you can see, is my tasks, and then the second one is admin tasks. Then we can save this file, wait some few seconds while the Angular compiler recompiles our project before it will refresh our browser, at which point you can now see we have my tasks and we have admin tasks. First, let's go to status and let's create a couple of statuses. Let's create a to-do. This needs to be done. Let's create in progress. This task is currently being done. Let's create another status, done. This has been done. So we've now created all of our status fields, and if you remember from the previous video where we had the CRM thing, right? We actually created another user called foo. So we now have a foo user that we can actually use to test the system, right? However, before we do, let's create a task using the admin task component, and that is kind of crucial because only admins have actually access to this component in the UI. So let's create a task and assign it to the foo user. Let's choose to do as its status, go shopping. We need more groceries. Let's save this task. And now let's create a task and assign it to ourselves just for kicks. To do, fix the roof. The roof is leaking and needs to be fixed. Why is this important? Well, because I want to log out now. Or actually, I don't even need to log out. I can just immediately go to my tasks, at which point you see I see only my tasks. And when I edit the task, the only thing I can actually change is in progress or done here. Now, at this point, we might want to change this task ID now. If we open up the my tasks component here, we find tasks. This is the my task thing. And we go down here because for some reasons it doesn't seem as if the, let's see, entity read count, let's see, tasks ID. Let me just find primary modules. Here it is, primary keys, update column, and this is our problem because it doesn't actually recognize status as a primary key. If we save it now, hopefully it's going to work. Let me try and see if it actually does work. Now the file I edited was edit.tasks_tasks.component.ts, and I moved the status field from update columns here and up into the primary key. Let me see if it now works, and now it definitely does not work. Update column. It's not the status we're supposed to move, it's the task ID. Sorry about that. Task ID, of course. So this is how it is supposed to look like, right? Save the file again, wait for the Angular compiler to kick in, and let's see if it is now currently working when we are editing the task. The roof is leaking, and now I can change the status to in progress. Okay, I just started fixing. Why didn't that work? MISC log, mandatory ID, task ID not given, edit task. Let's see why doesn't it supply my task ID here. Tasks, payload in progress, primary key, task ID, magic selector, task ID. Let me try to save it again and see why it actually doesn't work. Update columns. Maybe I need it here too. Task_ID. Let me try again just for kicks. In progress, save, and it doesn't work because it doesn't pass in the task ID. Let me try again. Let's edit, clear, change its status and see what's happening. And now it worked. Okay, finally. Basically what I did, I needed the task ID also in the primary key collection up here at line 29. If you created the exact same database as I did, you will find these things at the exact same position as I did in my Angular component. I basically took inside of source app components /task /modals. I found a file called edit.tasks_tasks.component.ts, and then I added this from that this.update columns into this.primary keys, such that the system recognizes that this is a primary key and passes it in every single time I'm trying to update an existing task. So basically now it is working. Now, as you can see, I'm logged in as root, so I have access to admin tasks, allowing me to create tasks for other people. If I log out now and I log in as foo, I probably have to refresh because the front end is not created in such a way that it actually rereads the components it should show according to my username's role. However, this is how it's going to look like when a non-root user enters the system. The only thing he can do, he can read users, and the only reasons why he can read users is because remember how we made that endpoint actually publicly available also for guest roles. He can read statuses, but he cannot create new statuses. He cannot edit existing statuses, and he cannot delete existing statuses. And most importantly of all is he can go to my tasks and he only sees his tasks. And when he edits a task, the only thing he can change is the status. And that's it. And now we have basically applied what some people would argue is fairly complex amount of business logic. And how did we do it? Well, we certainly didn't write much code to achieve it. We basically just, through the CRUD generator, we CRUDified the tasks table twice. The second time we CRUDified it, we changed its secondary URL and applied different settings up here on per individual field level. And that actually allowed us to implement fairly complex amount of actual business logic by simply squeezing our minds and thinking about the specification, how it ties in to the CRUD generator. So now for kicks, let's just edit a little bit of the front end that was generated for us. We're logged in as foo now, so let's log in as our root account now, because I want to show you something. Make sure you do Control R to refresh, such that you get the full menu here, and then go to status. Now, this looks ugly, right? Why? Because, I mean, well, I probably don't even need to explain why. So let me show you how to fix it. If we go back to Visual Studio Code, we expand status, we find the models folder, we open up the edit.tasks_status.component.html, and then you go to this line of code here where it says mat form field can edit column name. Now you see the CSS class we're using here. It's called entity-edit-field. If we just simply apply -white, and then we do the same for the description mat form field -white, and we save this file, then we have actually made it look quite beautiful. And I want to show you this because the front-end generator actually contains a lot of helper CSS classes that you might want to use in your own code as you see fit, right? So anyways, that was like a final little point before we are done with this particular session. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.